Hello, everyone. Tark Patel here from SB Live Sports. It's another episode of CIF Southern Section Sit Down. A little bit different episode I'm really excited about. We have Kara Johnson in studio from Unified Sports. Intellectual and developmental disabilities have athletes competing at their own level, some even winning state championships, track and field. Swimming is now a new sport for these athletes. Really excited to learn more about how that program is working with the CIF-Southern section and how it's grown over the last half a dozen years or so. Kara, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Great. So please, at the very just core of it, I think the viewers thinking, okay, Unified Sports, what is that? Floor is yours.
Unified Sports, oh gosh, my favorite thing to talk about. I can talk about forever. Unified Sports is an inclusive sports program in partnership with Special Olympics. We bring inclusive sports into schools. So, it's really this kind of three-pillar program that we try to implement in our schools, working with building youth leaders, having inclusive youth leadership, whole school engagement. How can we bring our awareness of inclusivity and inclusive sports to the majority of the kids on our campuses? And then, of course, Unified Sports. We have so many, I'm a special ed teacher, right? Teacher first. So we have so many students that are very, very athletic and they want to compete in sports. And, trying to think of it as, some students we have that have so many talents that maybe they won't make their high school sports team. Maybe they won't make the varsity team. Maybe they want to try out for it and, maybe there's just a few spots and that's something that they won't be able to really make, or maybe it's a transportation issue or something like that. So we started Unified Sports as, partnership with Special Olympics, having recreational inclusive sports on campus as, a club that we run across all of our schools.
So I know that you are a board member on the Special Olympics. So were you there first and then got into Unified Sports? Was Unified Sports first, then a board member on the Special Olympics? Which one came first?
Unified Sports came first, definitely. It's been 9 years now, I would say, since we started Unified Sports at Trabuco Hills in 2015. And then the board member title is recently new, probably within the last year.
Okay.
But I think a lot of it because of the Unified Sports work that we're doing in the schools, really makes me happy. There's three of us around the Southern section, well, two in the Southern section and one in the San Diego section that are Southern California board members. I think solely due to our, impact and relationship with the Unified Sports and what we do in the work in the schools.
So what I think what we talked about a little bit off air that I thought was so interesting is just like high school sports, every sport has its level. You got programs that, they compete, they're not so good. Then you've got the really high level competitive programs, baseball, basketball, the sports go on. And that same thing is pretty much duplicated, or at least trying to be duplicated in Unified Sports, where you get really, really competitive athletes, and then some that maybe they're competitive, but they need their own level. Talk about maybe the spectrum that Unified Sports offers athlete A, B, C, and all the way down to Z.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so wonderful because there are levels in Unified Sports that all of our students have access to. All of our athletes, which is what we call our students with disabilities, and then, of course, all of our partners, our students without disabilities. We have so many partners on our campus that want to participate, but they're in their own sports or in their own varsity sports, so there's conflicts and they want to get involved. Luckily, with Unified Sports, there are three levels at the recreational level, I would say, where, you have a player development model where, kids are helping each other out a little bit more. Maybe you don't have that 50-50 ratio. Maybe you have more gen ed students that kind of come into the club and help, model with the students and show how to do it. Maybe you're mentors or helpers a little bit. And then you have that recreational model where we've got athletes that want to play. We want to play basketball games at lunch. We want to, play flag football, unified flag football at lunch, and, unified soccer. We want to go through a season. We want to do recreational sports games. We too want to have a unified basketball game on a Friday night in the gym. We want the gym to ourselves. We want cheerleaders there. We want to have spectators. We want it to be a big deal. We want to do a senior night, a march out. So there's so many different things we could do at that level. And of course, that third level is the competitive level. That really is that separation of students that really can compete, that can, hang with, a 5, 6, 7 hour track meet, travel on the bus. They can, follow all of the rules that are required. They're really athletic, pretty fast runners. They can throw that shot put far, run within the lines. They can, handle that, when the starter gun goes off for track, that can start all of us, gets me every time. So, being able to separate those athletes that they want to compete. They want to compete with other schools. They want to wear the school uniform. They want to, try to qualify to something postseason, maybe a state championships, maybe a regional championships, things like that. So being able to offer all those levels at our schools is something for everyone, I think.
And this journey for you, tell us that story. It kind of came out of left field for you, maybe even landed in your lap. I don't know what analogy or you want to use, but it sounds like it wasn't something you were anticipating. Tell us how you even got into unified sports.
Absolutely, and both of those analogies are perfectly said. I have been teaching at Trabuco for 18 years now. Started with Best Buddies, an inclusive, awesome friendship club that we've had for a long time. And then, in 2014, 15, we had an 8th grade student come by with his family who, had heard about what we do with Best Buddies, and we had, been doing Best Buddies basketball games, which, looking back at it now, was kind of a unified basketball game. We hadn't heard of what unified sports was, and I remember them coming to visit the program saying like, oh yeah, I do Special Olympics, and there's this thing called unified sports. We'd love to bring it here. And I'm like, what's unified sports? We do Best Buddies. Like, I can't take on one more thing.
Sure.
Right? And then they explained, and I'm like, oh, that sounds great, but we kind of already do that, right? Just that closed mindset a little bit for myself, thinking, this is what we do. And sure enough, the student, Skylar Luden, I know who might be watching this, came as a freshman the following year. And sure enough, with that unified sports on his mind, and his parents were, big advocates for it too, and they brought it to me and had some conversations with my administration, our students, and we started with unified basketball, and it changed my life. It changed my life. It changed my school culture. It changed our district. It changed Orange County. It's infectious. It changed so many things, and I love to say, I'm really close with one of our school board members who was, my mentor when I first started teaching, and she loves to bring me back when we have these big events for school games or unified track or anything. Now we're in unified arts. I mean, it just doesn't stop, and she loves to just remind me, like, see what can happen when one student asks for it. One student just asked for this. Can we do unified sports? And look at the opportunity that it gave to so many students. It just was life-changing.
Yeah, that's a great story. What a ripple effect. You impacted that young man's life, but really he, just by stepping forward, he impacted your life, and here you are. It's a perfect segue to talk about the growth. So from one young man at Trabuco Hills, now there's, I want to get this number right, more than 100 schools with unified sports in the southern section alone, or maybe that's with middle schools and junior highs. Take it away. I know that you've got some better metrics for us and talk about its growth.
Yeah, absolutely. There's now 111 schools in the southern section that do unified sports.
That's what it is.
At all various levels. And that does include elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. And then out of the high schools, there's 51 high schools that currently do unified sports at some degree. Maybe not competitive,
sure.
Maybe it's recreational. At some degree, they're doing that. I do want to mention out in the Inland Empire, there's a Southwest League that they're created on their own, that they do recreational unified sports where they have all their schools in their league, and they have these ongoing seasons, and they organize busing and games in all different sports of unified sports, which kudos to them. It's really hard to do. I'm down there in South Orange County, and sometimes it's hard to get your neighboring school to participate, or to get for so many reasons, right? Resources, and it takes somebody to initiate that and lead that and go. But there's a lot of schools doing a lot of great work out there, which is awesome, and everyone has their own situation that works best for them and their school and their district.
You mentioned that one of the big events is a track and field championship, and I think you mentioned that that last year you had 19 schools participate, and you're thinking that number might get up to 40 this year. Why is it you think it'll get that high?
I think every year there are schools that are very interested in competing and participating in this. We do host it at Trabuco Hill, so it's not ideally, the most in proximity, closest place to, participate in, if, especially southern section expands so far. And, every year schools talk about coming. And then, when we get down to the actual date of the meet, sometimes it dwindles down. We started in 2019 with 9 schools participating. And to me, that was a win. If I can get
Sure.
another school to participate, it's awesome. So 9 schools started there. And then the year after, we doubled. And we're holding strong around that, high 19 range. I think at one point last year, we were anticipating 25 schools. And then if you backed out last minute resources, athletes that couldn't get cleared or, timing wise, more of that last minute planning. And I think a lot of schools have had so much time to think about it, to be able to process what's going to happen. I feel, with Special Olympics too, we've grown a lot with our Southern Section schools. We're really supporting our schools with the education of unified sports and this program that we have with them called the Unified Champion School Program, where we implement those 3 pillars in our schools. Just recently in January, we hosted a huge Unified Champion Schools conference in Temecula. At Pachanga, and it was like a 4-day conference. There was a ton of schools that participated in it. And Unified Track, I spoke about Unified Sports and Unified Track and Field and CIF, and it was a packed house. So we're really doing the work, I think, with getting the information out to schools as early as we can, so that our teachers and coaches can really process that information and plan to participate. Our commissioner, Mike West, is so wonderful. Started a advisory committee for unified sports. So we started that, at the beginning of this school year, where we identified members of the committee. We've met a few times. We have ongoing email chains going on. So I think that alone helps with, I almost want to say, like a guaranteed amount of schools that are planning to participate, ones that have been doing it from the beginning, and all of us in our different areas. It's such a great group of members of that committee, because we're all over the Southern Section. And we can all reach out to, our districts and our schools and our areas and spread that word, and really hope to kind of expect them to participate, knowing that they're doing the work, they're doing it on a day-to-day basis. And we want to see that, attendance at that championship meet in May.
Obviously, Unified Sports is making a huge impact in this community of young athletes that have disabilities and challenges. What about the impact of the partner? What about the impact of the general education student that gets an opportunity to help a young student athlete with those disabilities? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. I almost think sometimes the impact on the partner is greater. The impact on, myself and my staff and my other coaches and athletic directors and even my, support staff within the classroom. I think it's just such a great impact. Our partners make time for it. They're often 3-sport athletes themselves. They don't have time to do that, but they participate in our unified sports clubs, our recreational. They volunteer when they can. After I leave here today, we have a unified swim meet at Mission High School. So Tribuco and Mission, we're doing, a unified within the swim meet, and I've got 4 students coming to volunteer their time, 4 partners to just meet me there. They don't do swim, but they want to participate. They want to support. They want to help out. They want to make sure that, they're helping me with our athletes and our partners in the flow of the meet. And sometimes the order of events, you don't have all of it right in front of you. You have to listen, what event are we on? And what event is unified? And so just the support that we have have students that don't want to leave. We have students that have graduated and gone on to, UCLA, USC, Yale, Notre Dame. We've got partners that are seeking these programs out at their colleges. My best buddy's president last year, she also did unified sports. She's a president of her chapter at University of Notre Dame, and she tells me about it all the time, and she comes down to visit. So I think it becomes part of their life, and I think it'll stay with them forever. It's really, really impactful.
For high schools that want to get involved that aren't, what does that process look like?
I want to say that, all schools will probably know who to contact, if it's a neighboring school, if it's emails that we've sent out that have, come along their way, if they're athletic directors. Our Southern Section is so great about, getting the information out to athletic directors. So if people don't know where to go, at least they can mention it. And they're like, what, I think I received an email about something about Unified. Let me go back and check. There's always Special Olympics Southern California is usually, a lot of number one contacts I would say that schools reach out to. And then Most of the time, they put them in touch with, schools, nearby schools, local schools that are doing the work. I think that peer-to-peer relationship is really powerful. It's so easy just to listen to someone on the outside say like, oh, you should do this, this, and this. And I'm like, you don't know what we do in the schools. It's so hard. We have the time and this. But when you talk to, that peer-to-peer relationship, somebody else who's also in your same situation that's doing it, I think that is really powerful too. And that really helps kind of drive you and realize just when you're running out of gas, you're like, no, I've got all these things to look forward to. And I have peers and colleagues that are doing this too. So much value. It's awesome.
Is Unified Sports nationwide?
It is nationwide.
Okay.
It's worldwide.
Okay, worldwide.
Yeah.
So partnering with state associations across the country, CIF-Southern section, not to let's just be honest, it's one of the most powerful state associations in the country when it comes to high school athletics. The amount of schools in the Southern section is more than some states. So I know that the Southern section, when it gets on board with someone or collaborates, it can lead the way for other state associations because they're watching. Do you know if this partnership with the CIF-Southern section is paving the way for other state associations? Have you heard about that and how that's maybe helping to grow unified sports across the country?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say just within our own state, clearly our Southern section is paving the way for the state. We have a side committee throughout the state of California with the different sections too, with trying to get on board and trying to get on common ground, especially when we get to the state level for unified track and field, so that throughout the whole season we're all doing the same sort of expectation and identifying the same partners and athletes and the same events and things like that. But I would say, gosh, I hate to say this, I think the state of California might be a little behind
Oh, wow.
some of the states. And I didn't know that until I went to this national conference in South Carolina in 2017. Again, Barbara, just always having that, words of wisdom in my ear. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if I need to attend this. You have to attend this conference, Kara. You don't know what it'll do for you. Of course, it changed my life. We did Unified P, all these things. But then when I went to this across the country and I saw what other states were doing and the work they were doing and the sports they were doing, the unified sports they were doing, I was thinking,
eye-opener.
Why are we not doing this? In California? We don't have this. In 2015, because of that student who, came and we started unified sports, Tribuco Hills became the first school in all of Orange County to start unified sports.
Wow.
No one did it before. And here we are, at the World Games in 2015, I think it was in LA, they had unified sports competitions. I watched a unified volleyball competition. I was volunteering at that event and I'm like, what is this? A special Olympic? I don't, everybody, what? I don't understand.
Sure.
The talent, sure enough, it was unified volleyball. I'm like, what is this unified? And we didn't have it.
Okay.
So I think in some areas a little behind, but now that we know about it, you better bet we're going to be on that fast track to, what can we do to, grow this.
That's fantastic.
Great.
Yeah, no, hey, a little perspective. Nothing wrong with that. And I'm glad that the Southern section is able to maybe spearhead more of that growth here in California. I'm not sure if it's a bad question. I don't know. I'm not expecting you to list off every sport, but does the sports that are offered, pretty much every sport. I know you said swimming is new, track and field's pretty popular. Sports that are offered, some sports that aren't, and maybe one day they will. Can you touch on kind of what's offered?
Absolutely. For CIF specifically, I would say unified track and field, of course, and unified swim is new. I think there are some schools that are participating in unified cheer.
Okay.
That's something they're doing recreationally, but with their cheer team. So that's, something that a lot of schools are talking about. Unified flag football has been in conversations of, maybe a fall team sport would be something that would be, a sport that we want to move on to, I think, offer something a little bit, in the fall that you have a set team instead of more of that, partnership or individual, events. And then, as far as recreational unified sports, unified soccer is a big one, unified basketball, unified bowling even, unified bocce. There's
wow.
a lot of, those, when was it? 2022, maybe 2 years ago, I took 4 students. So 2 partners, 2 athletes to the USA Games in Florida for Special Olympics.
Wow.
They, for the first time, wanted to have a unified event. And so they did unified track and field. So I took, 4 students to Florida, competed in, 4 days of unified track and field competition. And they got to compete with, 16, 17 other states that were doing the same thing that we do that we would never know, right? Unless you're in this sort of an opportunity and at an event like this where you can say, wow, Tennessee's doing what we're doing. Like, look at their partners and athletes, and we're participating, and we're all just knowing we do unified track. It's pretty cool to see it on that bigger scale. But, going back to your question with, what is next, I think, maybe looking at a team sport, unified cheer, of course, really firming up what unified track is too, and unified spin. Let's grow these. Let's, make sure that we, can bring in schools that are really interested in this before we open up too much for students.
And I think we touched on it earlier, but maybe you can expand on it a little bit more. There's a state championship. Is that correct?
Yes.
For track and field? And is that going to be its first year this year, or it's already happened a year before? Is it new? Has it been going on? Talk to us about a state championship level in track and field.
Absolutely. So it's been going on for a few years. So the state championships is just the California State Championships for track, right?
Got it.
In Clovis at the end of May. I think it's a 3-day event. And, a few years ago, we Special Olympics and, Southern Section, we met with state up there at the state meet and said, hey, can we add in 3 unified events? These are what the events that we're doing across some of our sections. Can we offer that there as just an exhibition, right? An event. And they agreed. They said, yes, we'll give you 1 heat of the 100 for
There you
boys,
go.
1 heat of the 100 for girls, the 4x1 for boys, the 4x1 for girls, the shot put. So we started with that. And, we have students or pairs that qualify for Southern Section at least, at our meet that we host, that standalone unified championships that hopefully will double this year. They qualify from there. We hosted about 2 weeks before the state championship. So if you place, first your pair in any of those events, boys and girls, then it's, automatic
qualify.
bid to state.
Very cool.
And, something to work on too is just the growth even at state, and it's not always about state. It's not about let me just get there, but that whole journey leading up to it. I know a lot of schools I work with, they, get really caught up in, we want to go to this championship to go to state, which is awesome. And that's a great opportunity, but shouldn't be just your end goal. It should really be, at Tribuco, we participate in 5 or 6 dual meets along the way. We participate in, practices daily. It's the whole journey leading up to it. The championships and state is just a bonus. The championships is awesome because it's standalone, and our athletes and our team get to see all the other schools that are doing what they've been doing for months.
Sure.
Cool. And then state is just icing on the cake, right? But having that as your end goal can be really tough. But eventually trying to work on with state, do we have enough participation where we could do a prelims and then a finals? Right now it's just we have like a finals, which is still awesome. But can it be bigger? Can we eventually get to the point where we have triple the amount of unified entries, and they go to prelims, and then that dwindles down to the more spots.
Right. More spots from the Southern Section.
Right.
Most sports, the Southern Section gets more spots just because of how big and competitive it is. So that sounds like probably a pretty feasible ask right there.
Right.
As we start to wrap up, we've talked about the impact it's had on your life, the impact you've had on young lives. Thank you so much for coming in. It seems I'm asking you these questions, and it's almost as if unified sports has been around for a long time, but it really hasn't. But there's been so much growth in less than a decade here in the Southern Section. And like you mentioned, Orange County, the first school, Tribuco Hills, 2015. That's not even 10 years ago. You've got to be proud of the growth that's happened, not just for you, obviously, personally, but just overall. It seems to just be spreading like wildfire.
I totally agree. It's overwhelming in the sense, I mean, like you said, it was so well said how it seems like such a slow growth, but then also really fast, right? Like, how long have we been doing this? It hasn't been that long, but then it does seem that long, and then so many schools are doing that. It's overwhelming. I think it's incredible, and I think there, is as many schools that are doing it now. There's, maybe even twice as many that have been thinking about doing it and not knowing where to start. or and maybe not everyone supports it. All school sites are different, and maybe it isn't for everyone. But if you get the one student or a lot of parents reach out to me from other
Sure.
schools, other districts. They want this and they want to get it started, and sounds great, but it's got to be driven within, right? You've got to have someone in the school that wants to run it. Your administrator, your psychologist, you need a teacher, you need a coach, you need someone in there that's, with the students every day, all day, every day, that is going to put that work in and wants to get this going. And then, of course, students that are, bought into it, students that believe in it, that want to participate in it, that want to help, spread the word and grow that within the school site. And I think we're seeing that. I really do. I think we're seeing that across the schools and across the districts. The more that we, put it out there like this, right? Or, at meets or emails or, in the arts, whichever unified, subject or sport or event that you're pushing it out to. I think we're getting there. I think it really is spreading.
No, you can't stop. Barbara won't let you.
She will not let me. She will find me.
She is the spark plug for you on this. The unified sports and Special Olympics. Have you had athletes go from one? I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong or I'm getting this incorrect, but they're competing at what I would assume is a competitive level at the high school realm or in unified sports, and then they think, oh, I can compete in the Special Olympics. Does that tend to be a natural goal for the kids that are competing at a high level in unified sports? Is that kind of the next thing they want to go for?
Yeah, I think for some, definitely. Yeah, it definitely is. Where they could, Special Olympics is forever. There's no age limit on, your participation as an athlete in Special Olympics. So I think for some, it is. It is something that they want to do in the community for life and participate, competitively or recreationally, however they want to do it, because it is out there in the community. But for some, it's not. They transition out of high school sports, as, a lot of our athletes do.
Of course.
When high school's over and sports are over, then they transition into adulthood and, the workforce and things like that. But it definitely is an opportunity out there.
Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure if, and like you mentioned, about the state championship, that always shouldn't be the end goal, but there's nothing wrong with having goals. There's nothing wrong with aspiring to something. So I was curious about how the Special Olympics maybe motivates athletes to try and go and compete in that. And certainly, of course, most athletes, a very small percentage of athletes play collegiately. High school days are the days, and then of course getting old and getting a job is very, very overrated. I always tell kids, man, stay in college, stay in high school. You don't want a job like a regular person because it's highly overrated. I guess just to wrap it up, maybe the word that hasn't been talked about enough, although I could see it in your spirit and the way you speak, you're having a lot of fun. So maybe just talk to, I'm sure it can be challenging at times, but overall, it sounds like you're having a lot of fun doing this.
Absolutely. I can't get enough of it. I really am. And I don't know if it would be as much fun without all the support that I've been so fortunate to have. With my family, of course, first and foremost. I'm often doing these things and not that, and they're like, "What about us?" And
oh man,
I'm like,
yeah.
You too, do it with me.
Yeah, sure.
But just even at my site, we've gone through some changes over the last 9-10 years where there were some times and some moments where I'm like, maybe this can't continue, right? I'm pushing water uphill, and I don't want to just sustain this. I want to grow it. I want it to grow. And here I am fighting for resources that I've got other schools turning to me looking for growth, and I'm fighting to sustain, and I think we've jumped over that hurdle. But it is fun, with that support. It's a lot more fun. And I talk to schools and they're like, how do you get to the point where it is fun and you have all the support? Because I feel like I'm making more enemies than friends, right? Because you're asking for so much.
Sure.
It's a big ask. And I just patience, and a lot of the time the work is in, you fund what you value and what you see, and the more you invite people to, the more they get to enjoy it and they see the value in it. And you can't not support it, once you really see it and when you're in it. So
Kara Johnson, thank you so much for joining us today on CIF Southern Section Sit Down.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I was honored to be here.
If we can get the camera on, I got one. She brought us a little surprise. I got to get it on air. Look at that. Unified Athletic sports gear. Can't go wrong there. So thank you for bringing us some gifts, Kara. And thanks for watching this episode. I'm Tark Patel with SB Live Sports. Don't forget scorebooklive.com, high school sports nationwide. Of course, we cover the CIF Southern section, rankings, playoffs. We do reveal shows for sports. It's all there, scorebooklive.com. Thanks for watching today's episode.